Next up is anti-spin. Now, anti-spin is just a little bit tricky because it's the first time that we had to deal with the staff turning in the opposite direction that the hand does. When we perform an isolation or an extension, you'll note that my pinky end is completing one full circle in the same amount of time that my hand does, and is going in the same direction. When I'm completing an anti-spin flower, however, with my staff now is turning in a clockwise direction relative to me, and my hand is turning in a counterclockwise direction, like so. Anti-spin's a little bit tricky because for the first time we have to worry about how many of those little points out to the side that we're creating every time we complete one single hand movement, right? So for example, in staff, this would be considered to be a 4-petal anti-spin. It would be considered a 2-petal anti-spin if we were playing around with either poi or clubs because they only have one end. Once you add the 2 ends for a staff, it gets a little bit more complicated, and we count each and every time one of those ends pops out away from us. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 points where one end of the staff is pointing away from body center, right? Now, there's 2 different flavors of this 4-petal anti-spin for double staves. There is what I like to call the thumb end, and there's the pinky end. What I'm referring to when I say thumb end versus pinky end is I'm referring to whichever end forms a horizontal line across the shoulders. If you look very carefully as I'm performing this, you'll note that as I go back and forth, my thumb end essentially forms a completely straight horizontal line that goes across the line of my shoulders from side to side. It's not as well developed a line, but my pinky end is also creating a straight line. It just happens to be up and down. I generally find that the horizontal line is much more consistent than the vertical line, so that's how I tend to think of what the guiding principle of each anti-spin is. We'll go through both of them real quick. To do the thumb end, you are going to start with your staff down in front of you with the thumb end pointing straight up. And again, we're going to go for that grip where essentially the staff is resting on the joint of your thumb and all of your fingers are pointed out towards your pinky end. And from here, you're going to let your thumb end slide straight out to the right. Now, it's really tempting when this happens to let it slide out in such a way that the pinky end is on the inside of your elbow. That is, it's touching the elbow pit right here. What you actually want to do is when you push it out, you want to make sure that it is touching the back side of your elbow. That is, the side that's got all the bones and stuff jutting out. The reason for that is when we do our next movement here and pull the thumb end back in to our center line, the pinky end goes straight up. If we have the pinky end here on the inside of the elbow, this becomes a really, really, really uncomfortable kind of reach through in a space between our elbow and our body. It's not impossible, but it's uncomfortable. Whereas if we have that pinky end on the outside of the elbow, it can go up pretty easily and we just return to the same grip that we had down below. To complete this, of course, we're going to push that thumb end out to the left-hand side, and again, we want to see that pinky end of the staff that's touching the outside of our elbow, and then we're going to drop the pinky end straight down to return to this position where our thumb end is pointing straight up, right? So again, for review, its thumb end is up, thumb end goes out to the right with the pinky end behind your elbow, thumb end comes in with the pinky end pointing straight up, thumb end goes out to the left. Again, the pinky end is touching the outside of your elbow, and we drop down the pinky end. Thumb end returns to the center to complete it. Again, we want to learn this in all the different timing and direction combinations. And we also want to learn the pinkie inversion. Now, the pinkie inversion is going to start with your thumb pointing down and your pinky pointed out. And I generally find that the best way to do this is actually to start with the pinky end on the outside of your elbow in that position that we were just playing with out here. What you're going to do here is you're going to jut your pinky end straight out, and your thumb end is going to come in as though it's going to touch the inside of your elbow. And then you're going to push your thumb end straight up, and then your pinky end out. And again, your thumb end is going to be touching the inside of your elbow, so it's going to be hidden behind your arm on your left-hand side here. And finally, you're going to drop that thumb end back down, and you want to return to this position where the pinky end is on the outside of your elbow. So, it's pinky out, the thumb is on the inside, thumb up, pinky out, the thumb is on the inside of the elbow once again, and thumb down. Really, it's 6 1/2 dozen or the other, which one you're doing with. As you're playing around with switching between your isolations and your anti-spins, you're going to find a need for both. So please make sure that you're learning each variation on this.